Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Dynamics Fortnite Fridays.
Where we cover everything dynamics, great and small. So we're into February. It's Groundhog's Day. Puxatawny Phil actually did not see his shadow, so it's 6 weeks till spring, Bart. But given that it's coming up on Valentine's Day, do you happen to have a really bad dad joke for me today?
Well, of course, and I think good historical perspective, Groundhog's Day was several days ago.
Yes, I mean, yeah, it's
Yeah.
Puxatawny Phil, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so my son Parker, senior this year, and you're probably pretty well aware of this because we know each other pretty well. Parker loves to play tennis. He's on the boys' tennis team, and tennis season is coming up. So
Yep.
with tennis season coming up and Valentine's Day coming up and being a senior and finally kind of getting mature, I went to Parker and I said, well, Parker, kind of like your opinion about love.
Okay.
He said,
where are you going with this?
said, Dad, love means nothing to me. You don't get it?
Oh, yes. Okay,
tennis.
it's tennis player.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, wait for it.
Wait
Okay.
for it. Right.
Okay, that was definitely a want dad joke. So yeah, it was
course,
the latest like me's loved. Got it. Follow the bouncy ball.
I had to try to at least get a little Valentine-y love.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good. So I have
What do you
one
have?
that's I don't have one that's topical, in the season, but I do have one that's topical based upon like all the co-pilots and the innovations and stuff.
Oh.
That we had. So I was doing some research and I was trying to figure out, I was like, what is the most groundbreaking discovery in history?
The shovel.
Oh, nailed it, man. Nailed it. Yeah.
Love it.
Way to go, Bart. Okay. It's going to be a good show. All right.
It is going to be a good show. All right. So let's start in a little content on Power Automate Desktop. So the January update, we're always just a little behind in the news on these, and the January update had some really nice update features. One is we put a little more AI right into the UI for the maker. So as you are making one of these desktop flows, if you hover over an existing step, it can give you suggested actions of things you might go do to try to help make that creative juice get to flowing and be able to build things a little faster with things you might do. So love that. We're also now allowing blank or null values to be input into various places. Many times you have to mark something as optional instead of required if you're going to put a blank value into it. And so we've got that little flag now as well. So good to know that that is something that is possible instead of just a empty string, because empty string and null value are actually two different things in the way most APIs work. Granted, this is desktop flow, so it's not APIs, but still some UIs actually make the difference there too. Great that we have finally gotten around to making that desktop client support single sign-on. So as you launch Power Automate Desktop, most of the time, it will not require you to put creds in unless you're trying to impersonate someone else on it. Word got some new actions. If you do a lot with Word, kind of nice to know that there are some things you can do that you didn't used to be able to. Work queues have a new action item for processing notes. So it's kind of nice that you can put some notes on there as you're working on that queue item. HTML's been improved a little bit. Attaching to an SAP instance is now possible in Power Automate Desktop to actually take desktop actions on the SAP client a little easier. And SharePoint can now create new document sets. So that was actually quite a bit of innovation for Power Automate Desktop in one release. The Power Apps feature update, it's always a fantastic review of all the stuff that has happened in a month by Clay as he brings these out. We've already talked about most of the items on here, but I'm going to just recommend you read through it to make sure that you're aware of a lot of them. But I'm going to skip down and talk about one that is a little bit near and dear to my heart that I didn't know about until this came out. And that one was when you are working collaboratively on the same Canvas app. So that's kind of been around for a while for co-presence. One of the problems in that working relationship that you might have with your peers is that only one person can be active at a time. And until this recent release, that person who was active was completely in control. And if they went to the bathroom and never came back or just left themselves logged in a co-editing experience and went to bed, you had no option to take over their session as the co-editor person. So they just left it locked with them as the primary editor until they finally came back and logged out. Well, now there's a 2-hour timer that if that person who is the primary editor has been inactive for 2 hours, it lights up for anyone else who logs into that app to start editing it to be able to take control over it. And I think that is super helpful for those people who are potentially working on the same Canvas app with multiple people to be able to do that much better. Lots of other great stuff. Please look through all of it and find all the other pieces of great updates to documentation, updates to functionality, and everything that Clay puts together for us every time one of these comes out, which is roughly monthly. Next thing, there's quite a few things that have become generally available in the last 2 weeks. One of them is in Power Platform. When you connect to a database with database creds, that allows you to make that connection, like with SQL creds or with Oracle creds or whatever at the database level, which gives you all sorts of great permissions. And then you could share rights to use that app. It doesn't actually share the creds with all the other people who you've shared that app with historically, if you actually connect it that way. But the problem, if you will, in a lot of that is once you had shared an app and that implicitly granted other users the rights to use that database account to access that database inside of the app, by sharing that connection, it actually left that connection open to the database. And even though your app may have not allowed them to do anything but what you actually told them they could do within the app, they could go create their own app using that same implicitly shared connection to do whatever that database admin account could do on that database. So it wasn't very secure in the big picture if someone was a little bit malicious in trying to figure out what to do. That has all been updated. We now completely secure every one of those implicit connections and put an abstraction layer in the middle so that when you share it, it's actually not giving the full database access. It's only within the context of that app that you have shared the permissions, so that if someone else tries to do something different with that implicitly shared connection, they're blocked from being able to use it except within the context of that app. So long-winded way to say this is a fantastic thing that is finally generally available. Use it in production, and please, I would say first and foremost, if you're using SQL, try to use the intra-ID secured way of granting authentication to that SQL server so that people log into SQL as themselves when they're using that connection. That takes care of all of this. But if you do have to use the SQL creds, just make sure that you're using the up-to-date version of the app. And if you've got something out there that you developed, 6 months, a year, 2 years ago that used SQL connector, go into your app, update it so that you get the current version, and that will grant this implicit control to secure that implicit connection so that you're for sure making it as secure as you can without having changed the functionality. So with all of that said, let's go back to the next thing that is generally available, and that is VNet data gateways. So if you've got data sitting in the cloud, especially in Azure, and you have VNets that secure those resources inside of Azure so that the data that is being traversed from your network out to those Azure resources and back becomes completely part of your network and your VNet, and it's got the firewalls around it and things like that. By putting this VNet data gateway capability out there, and now that it's generally available and supported in Power Platform as well as Fabric and Power BI, that is a big step forward for people who have quite a few cloud resources they want to keep tied to their network only and never let any of the traffic out to the public internet. So use it, generally available, fantastic step forward. I try to remind folks every time the Center of Excellence Starter Kit has a new release come out, and that happened on Wednesday of this week, that new release did hit. So update your Center of Excellence kit if you're one of the people who maintains that kit. AI Builder document handling, another nice improvement here, that invoice processing became kind of a built-in, pre-programmed, just kind of SaaS service, click on it, use it, and go. And that was a really nice step forward in the ease of use capability. But it only did what it did. If you decided that it wasn't meeting all of your needs for processing invoices and you had some custom fields on your invoices that you needed to capture, you had to start from scratch and build an entire model that worked well for invoices with your custom stuff. Well, the nice thing that is out there now is if you need to customize a document processing AI model in AI Builder, you have an option to start from the trained invoice model that we provide that used to be only as a SaaS service that you didn't have any rights to do anything to, as your baseline, and you can just create the customization on top of that to capture your custom fields that you have to train it on. So should make it much easier to train, much faster to get to productivity that really works for you. The other thing that's really nice in this document processing world is it used to be you could pretty much capture anything you wanted as long as it was text, but now we can specifically call out when I'm capturing a custom field, is this a date field? Is it a number field? Is it text? What is it? So that when we're using it later in our processes, that it's a little easier to just stick it in as a number type or as a date type without having to do anything else to it. And it's understood in the downstream processes a little easier. So a couple of great things there. For the theming updates, it seems like these are pretty much monthly updates at this point. There's only a couple things to call out. Date Picker had a couple of little things done to it. The table control, big thing here is you can now sort. You just have to turn on that enable sorting property. And then color palette choosing became a little bit more intuitive and robust. They got some other things that they called out that are coming. I'm going to try to leave those out for now, and we'll tell you when they actually are ready to use. And then the last thing is, one of the cool features in making Power Apps that you could do is just describe your app in text, and it would create the tables and the UI for you. And that's now available everywhere in the world in 8 different languages. So knock yourself out. If you weren't in America, you finally have the ability to use this in these 8 different languages. So make sure and take advantage of that. Also, if you are putting your environment somewhere other than the US, you'll probably have to enable the generative AI features to allow data movement across regions. Now, if that breaks your compliance regulation needs, you won't be able to use this yet, but still a good thing to at least check out and make sure whether that's possible for you. Then I've got a few things that are specific to the customer engagement stack. And this one isn't just customer engagement. This was new to me. I'm sure you guys that are a little more finance operations, business central centric have known about this for a while because it actually is part of LCS. But a dynamics translation service to help you take things that we've developed and put out there in our native language packs. Now, this service I became aware of will actually work in not only those finance operations, business central type apps, but will work across these different tools in all of these various products, including the CRM or CE products that we can support regex, or if you're doing documentation, documents like Word docs. And this translation service can help you take from whatever your base language is into all the other languages you might need to do that localization in. So if you've got more to add on that, Dan, as someone who's probably used the translation service, feel free to fill me in, but I thought it was exciting to learn that that can be used on the CE stack, and I never knew that.
Yeah, it's been in F&O for quite a while.
Yeah, and I'm guessing people use it fairly extensively. And
So in fact, a lot of customers, that is like something that we don't have those translations. It does add their languages automatically, so put their own tags in and stuff. So yeah, it's kind of nice. It's like actually F&O is actually one of the guinea pigs. We're actually using the new service first. It's usually the other way around, So,
right.
We're last in line with the bowl out most of the time. So yeah, but yeah, it's like dig into it, right? And it helped with like not only like translate like all your labels and things like that, not only the or like your descriptions and things that that you often have to translate, or any customizations. It'll also
Maybe
translate. So dig into that, yeah.
The out-of-box help files that people can click on from the question mark and stuff are something you need to think about as well. So all that.
Yeah, but that's moving to a sidecar though, Bart, right? As a co-pilot. So that is just the most fantastic thing. Okay, we're digressing. We better get going. So okay, yeah.
All right, next thing. Sequences are a really big deal to try to help bring some structure to your sales process. And this isn't really telling you about a whole new feature. It's just some really good guidance that if you are in sales ops or sales management and you're trying to think about how sequences work in your sales process, that knowing that you can have multiple sequences that apply and have the user switch between them to choose the right sequence for the identified business process is something that it goes into, along with several other tips and tricks on how to make sure that sequences are working for you in the way that will be most helpful. So good read for sales ops folks. The other thing, I'm not even going to click into this because it's mostly just a news that Copilot for Sales and Copilot for Service both went generally available. So if you want to use these in production form now across Dynamics, ServiceNow, across Salesforce.com, whatever of the supported tools that you might want to use Copilot for Sales or Copilot for Service on, they are generally available, fully supported, and ready to go. With the D365, I think it's been generally available for a little while, but this is putting the abstract ones completely in the GA status as well. Last thing that I've got here is the enhanced focused view of records in the Sales app. And to be completely transparent, I didn't really know what the focused view of records meant, but that is the term that we now use for what was traditionally known as the Sales Accelerator. So when you click on Sales Accelerator and it shows you that list of all of your records on the left-hand column, that's not the sitemap, but just that left-hand column, and then like the form for the record that was selected over here on the rest of your screen, that is the focused view of records. And we've made some new enhancements to allow it to work for some more entities, to make it easier to maintain what user preferences are in it, and some new capabilities to do things like multi-selects of records to take actions on them, and ribbon level command bars if you're having different record types shown, and advanced filtering capability that is more robust than just the standard little filter options that were pre-programmed that we used to have. So that, and nice ways to default that focused view on different record types. So we have made it the default type for leads, but not the default type for ops, accounts, or contacts, which were also options. If you decide that you would like to make it the default view of all of those record types, that it's pretty easy to configure that as an admin, and ways to clarify how to do that are included in the article. So take advantage if it's going to work for you. With that, that's all my news, Dan. Let's hand it over and let you tell us all the rest of the story.
Let's change the record focus over to me, to F&O and some of the ERP functions. So today, not a ton of line items, but some pretty good stuff. It's, the roadmap came out this last month in January, and I just wanted to cover a couple things just like to start planning, because I was at a customer a couple weeks ago and they really wanted to know about what the roadmap, what we're doing, what we're focusing, what we're changing on. So so I get that a lot from the customers. So I'm not going to go through all the details of the roadmap. I'm going to go through all the details as I do on the update releases, but you need to start planning for the future. So a couple things I just wanted to talk about on HR, and there's not a ton of things coming out in HR. So first of all, there's an Explore Recruiting Copilot. So basically that's a template within the human resources to say, here's the qualified candidates based upon your criteria and your recommendations, so I can surface those to the top. Now, in the old HR system, we used to have something like that on the recruitment, but it wasn't necessarily a Copilot. So again, we're starting to make some changes since we brought it back into finance and supply chain, but not much. Also, so again, we're going to start utilizing Entra ID into integration. And I did not know this until I was this days old when I learned this part, but we're actually just changing AAD into Entra. And I don't know why I didn't know that, but it's like, okay, sometimes you just learn something, right? So, yeah. I was like, so if I didn't know it,
we did it.
Yeah, we did. It's like, but I was like, I'm probably the only person at Microsoft that didn't know that, but there's got to be somebody else out there that didn't know that too. And don't say a word, Max. So, again, it's like, the recruiting centric is like the same as those templates. So not a ton of stuff that's going to be coming up, but look forward to that as we go through with HR. So not a ton, just be aware of that. There's a lot more coming to Business Central. So if you look at Business Central, first of all, we're going to make faster adoption with the Power Platform. So we're going to set up the workflows and use the co-pilots within the workflows to be able to use that within the Power Plat within Business Central. As far as the application itself, We're making improvements with project and services management across the board. We're doing some stuff for countries. It's now available in 155 countries. What I found amazing, right? Because there's like 209 or whatever the current count. I don't know. It's somewhere around that, current countries in the world. But 155 of those are localized. Countries and regions are localized within Business Central. So clearly, that's our small to medium-sized business application, but it is global across the board. There's some other functions in governance and administration. So self-service can allow you to do things like have audits and privacy policies and Azure Lockbox and encryption keys within that. So there are going to be some updates into that. Some legislations with some VAT processing. So I talked about this in the show a couple weeks ago. So we're going to even do some more on this, but just like the VAT, you might have a posting on a certain date, but that doesn't ship to that. When's the VAT actually going to be across a period on that? So it aligns across those different periods, just like when the transaction date versus the actual taxing date of that more appropriately. So there's going to be like more in Power BI layouts, and I'll talk about this in the next, because that's going to be coming an update pretty soon. More on high availability, performance, stability, governance, and compliance, and then of course there's going to be more co-pilots as we go through. So just kind of get an idea of what's coming up in Business Central in the next 6 months, and a little bit more to read about that, so you can get into some more detail. So just wanted to foreshadow that a bit. But what's most important is just like the updates that you're going to be looking forward to coming up. So I'm not going to go through all the updates, just a few things that I wanted to kind of focus on. So there is better management of the work order integration within the field service within Business Central. So if you actually create that work order with within field service, it's like it's going to match up to the Business Central. You will be able to manage those items and hours and rates within that field service. So it's much more like what it is with finance and supply chain. The next thing is a pretty big deal. So we're going to be able to use virtual tables and expose those Business Central virtual tables within the Dataverse. So you can use tables from any place and be able to link those up very easily or utilize those within one app. And I found that to be really, really nice when they came out in finance and supply chain several years ago. So that was a pretty big deal to me. So a couple other things I wanted to focus on is like there's now a Shopify B2B integration within Business Central. Now, I announced early last year, that there was a Shopify integration in Business Central, which is very cool for an e-commerce. But now we have it for business to business. So those are, you might have different catalogs or, certain catalogs that you sell within that, or restrict certain products to different items. But you can put things on account and things like that with a B2B and onboard different users with different users types, what they can do from that B2B relationship. A couple other things, the new Excel layouts for 35 reports on that. I mentioned that we're doing some more on that integration within Power BI and Excel. So this allows 35 interactive tables to generate analysis and present those learnings on that. So you can actually use copilots and AI within those templates to give you some insights into that data. So I thought that was something that I wanted to point out into the updates here that are coming up in March. There is some updates in HA, or higher availability performance and things like that. Let's see. Oh, this one I wanted to show. Use linked environments to the database integration. So with this linked environment, you can have you have a privacy boundary within that URL into the Dataverse that's available through that connection. So there's also a wizard to help you set that up, and it's assisted as you go through and set up that linking within F&O. And the last thing I wanted to point out on this one is there's now a drag and drop to attach multiple files. So if you want to drag and drop as attachment to an item master or sales or things, you can actually do that with multiple files. Finance and supply chain doesn't do that as well. So if there's anybody in that dev that's watching this, or R&D, come on, step it up. We need to catch up on the finance and supply chain side for that. So those are the updates that we have within Business Central. So be aware, we'll have some more coming up. I'll probably announce some more in like March and April, as there's going to be a lot more coming up there. Next thing I wanted to talk about was like on the finance roadmap. just kind of give you some insights into what's coming. And as just an overview, this video is actually worth watching. It's about 7 minutes long. Talks about some of the co-pilots, and it's a nice synopsis of what's coming up in there. But you know, the first thing is it's like, you know, big investment into the BPA, or business performance analytics and planning. So this will give you analytics and insights into the data, so like operational data, turn it into insightful management data across that. There's basically some updates within the core financials, so there'll be a lot of different features I'll be talking about over the next few months into that. The globalization studio. So this allow you like a low code, no code to automate like complex tax things, or it's like, you know, allow partners to extend localizations into it. It's like some different areas that we don't do directly from Microsoft. Some things with e-invoicing or VAT tax or value-added tax declarations, payment formats, reconciliations, and things like that. So quite a bit within that globalization studio. And then for the administrators, this is kind of interesting. So as we do the updates, we can define it as like user automatically has got this updated. So it's like they'll get this feature. It's like oftentimes like you do in Office, right? So it's automatically going to be set by that. Or you can say it's like, you know, by certain type of configurations, you can have the administrator, the maker, the business analyst actually determine if we're going to turn that on. So you'll see that on the updates that we do on the roadmaps, on the like the version updates that we're going to be seeing here in just a second. So that's up within the finance. A little update for the supply chain. So on the supply chain, there's a few things. Again, we have the video kind of outlining that across this finance and supply chain. But now we have a capable to promise, or CTP for capable to promise, or oftentimes capacity available to promise, what I hear in the industry, or CATP. But now this is going to allow planning optimization to be able to run that. So you can actually get a quick run, do it right when you have an order or a complex order, to give them actually a valid delivery date or promise date on that. So that's a big deal for a lot of customers on a made to order, because it's like you want to know when you schedule it. If you do any construction work, it's like I can get it to you this by this date. Well, they're going to have like a group of people to actually waiting for that to get delivered, so they can actually run that within that plan or that production. So that's really important to give an accurate date onto that. A lot of customers seem to be asking for that. There's some more in planning collaboration, be able to work with master plan at the same time, so a couple people can be updating it or appending that as you go across. There's a new returns policy that you can save from the customers for the blind receipts, the putaways, you know, the scrap disposal, you know, based upon what you want to do with a return. The disposition of those items. It's like, you know, we can create carrier return labels and carton labels, and that's all from the app itself, the warehouse app. There's also the warehouse only mode that we're releasing on this, as we talked about that for a few shows. There's some ATP available for inventory visibility, and that's important because you need available to promise. Well, when can I actually get it to you from the inventory app? So typically it's like you look at a lead time and you got like a static lead time, but available to promises is like if I have things that are made to stock and I have a production order coming in, or a purchase order for that distributed item coming in, it's like, when's it coming in? When can I actually get that shipped out? And it'll run that ATP calculation with that inventory visibility. Remember, those are for third-party add-ins or different ERPs, or it might be from Salesforce. It might be from some other e-commerce system to use that in there. So there's also a new inventory visibility API. So if there's, you know, external inventory changes within the supply chain, that'll update onto that. So there's also PO requisition approvals from the mobile app. A lot of my colleagues and my customers often actually create one within the Power App. Well, now that's going to be out of the box. Now, there's some co-pilots that are coming in for skills, co-pilot for demand planning. And when that app comes out, I'm really looking forward to that. It's like, okay, give me some recommendations on what I need to do for forecasting or planning. So, and then the new app that's coming out with that. So you can read some details on that. I just wanted to foreshadow what's coming out in the next 6 months within finance or supply chain and finance there. Now, the last thing I'm going to cover is a 10.0.39 update. In a fortnight or in 2 weeks, I'm going to be covering things in sales and then cross app. But first of all, it's just in the supply chain. So the first thing in this is like for inventory logistics, there's an offset inventory visibility adjustment. Now this is for the inventory of visibility service. Now, if you actually have a sales, right, and it's like it ships out, you're going to have a cost of goods sold up, offset or inventory deduction on that offset, right? So typically that's done in ERP, but now we're going to allow that through that API within that, so you can actually have the debit and the credit transactions on that for inventory visibility so we can handle it through that transaction set instead of having it done on the endpoint there. So another thing is there's a warehouse single sign-on for the authentication of mobile devices. Before, it's like you have to sign on the mobile device, then you had to sign on directly to the warehouse, and there's often a different password, but it didn't use Intra, right, or AAD. So now that is available. Now there's a bunch of features that are coming out within the supply chain. Not like So first of all, is consolidate incoming work to directives. Now, we could consolidate work before. It's like, so if you actually have multiple things coming in, we can actually consolidate that PO or consolidate that sales that's going to come out and consolidate and do all the picks, and then just stage those at a warehouse. Well, this allows you to consolidate things that materials aren't available yet. Well, what does that mean? If you have an ASN or advanced shipping notice for something that's coming in for a distributed item that that's going to be there today, we can actually start planning for that pick or that work that's going to be done ahead of time, even before it's there. So again, that's a nice feature. There's some advances in license plate movements to actually just make it quicker to be able to scan all the different components on the license plate. And remember, a license plate is a consolidation of things on a pallet. It might be like items or not like items that are on that pallet. There's also the availability to split an order when receiving using the warehouse management app. So if you actually want to split in some put away or transfer that order, kind of like a cross-docking component into that. There's also some inventory filters available to that. Now there's, I talked about the inventory visibility with the ATP, before, and that's a program that's 10.0.39. We're releasing that. There's also we can create a planned order setting the purchase quantity instead of the requirement quantity. So if it's like a required quantity, we can say, hey, no, it's like there's min quantity to be able to pull that out in planning optimization. So that's a new feature. And again, planning optimization is getting closer to on par with the old MPS engine or the old planning engine. Still not quite there. So if you're going to use that, as kind of a side note, make sure you do the evaluation test on that before you actually start using that. This next thing is also important. So the CTP with the planning optimization for the sales order line, which I mentioned that is enabled, or you can enable it now and you can actually run those very quickly. But you can run at the line item individually, probably not feasible for most customers that have lots of line items, but you can actually run it at the sales order header level or the total order level. Now, historically, if you actually ran that and it got an error, the whole thing would fail and you can't give a CTP date. Now, what this will allow you to do is just ignore the things that have an error and just give give the result based upon the line items that you can. So not all of them might be able to set up, but they might be short lead time items that aren't really of consequence, or they're stock items of consequence. So we can actually exclude demand forecasts from certain time periods of planning optimization. So it's like, okay, so we want to start planning and plan that optimization, run some finite, and we don't want to include forecasts like really far out. It doesn't matter at that point, right? There's some min-max coverage case rounding. So if you want to round it down, it's always going to actually round it down within that min-max. If you want to round it up based upon the requirements, it's always going to do the max level of that min-max. So a couple things there. Recalculation of finite material date optionally for planning date. So some things like you don't want to have that finite material considered because it's actually going to take the calculation a little bit longer into that. And so it's just that helps you with the performance of that calculation. So it'll basically just run faster for you. So round down in advanced days. So this one, you want to read into this. I'll read this in more detail, but this says it's like, okay, we want to round down or around the advanced days. So like if something's due in 2 days or 1 day and 4 hours. We're going to run it on 1 day, so we can actually match it up with something we have to do today. So it basically kind of sequences those things for for things that are close, so it doesn't push into the next day for that requirement day when you can actually just bring it into the next day. So min max coverage days I kind of talked about. Let's see. Okay, this one's simple. It's just update bill of material change for default settings from item to item. So it just actually says that when you have an engineering change management, where are you going to actually set that as a default from the item to the item as that first item. This one is not available to you yet, but I just want to mention what it is. This will enable prospects in the sales quotation to match up with prospects within Dynamics 365. Okay, that's fine. We have the dual right. So, but the problem with that is it's like once you convert like a prospect to a customer in sales, we want to make sure that we do the prospect to a customer within finance and supply chain so that those two sync up. And so that's available, but you can't use it right because there's some more functionality that's dependent upon it. So while even though it's available, you can't use it yet. So I'm not sure why they put that in there. They just enabled the feature so you can actually have those prospects, but it won't convert automatically. So just be careful when you, if you are exploring or using the dual right within that sales and finance system. So this is, vendor search on sales and marketing, and a couple more things that we have here. So this is replace alternative to defaults on the sales line. So you can say, hey, always replace it and get rid of the old one that it is replacing. So if B replaces A, it's always going to be A, and everything from A is wiped out. If that's not turned on by default, no replacements automatically made. A will be in there. You'll have to deal with that downstream. So, and the last thing is, a reference to sales export policy. So if you have a lot of data that's exporting to sales, do you actually want to turn on all those change order things so they'll have to rerun all those orders, or just turn that off and not include those changes to sales quotes or sales orders on that next incremental run? So quite a bit in finance and supply chain. I'm happy to see a lot within the planning optimization. But with that, Bart, I have that's what we have for 10.0.39 and updates within the ERP world.
Always lots of great stuff in there.
Yeah, always good.
So I only have just a couple of really quick call outs, especially since you mentioned some features that were relying on dual right, and you talked earlier about how awesome the virtual entity or virtual table capability is, that there were solution updates to several of those features. If you're using them, make sure and check to make sure the solutions are as up to date as you can get them. We keep making tweaks to make them better, faster, and more reliable, so keep those up to date. And otherwise, I think everybody have a fantastic Valentine's Day. Give your loved ones a hug, and we will see you all in a fortnight. And somehow you went muted, Dan, when you were talking, but
of course I did, right? So I'm just going to mention, it's like, have a great Valentine's Day, and a tip to everybody out there: ChatGTP will write a Valentine's Day poem for you. So you just have to edit it, give it a theme, give it a try. See you in a fortnight, everybody.
See you all.
I just had to say that, Bart.